Coming to you from the city of the weird. Exploring topics from the esoteric and unexplored to dimensions unknown. Shining a light of truth on the darkest corners of our reality. Welcome to the Curious Realm.
Hello, everybody. Happy Tuesday. Hope you got a cup of coffee this evening. Got myself a nice cappuccino. Ready for some conversation. Getting ready for the road. Next week, be prepared for a great pre-recorded episode. We actually just kicked out the content today. Got things ready. But next week, I will be on the road in San Antonio. So I will be bilocating for you folks. In San Antonio with clients and on air with you, as always, with new content. We will be joined in the first segment next week by our good friend Ryan Debian. He is the psychokinesis champion 2 years running. Last year, inaugural year, and this year at Games. So we will be talking to him about not only Games and what the competition is like and what it's like being on stage, being tested in such a way. Live in front of an audience, and what it's like to begin training those abilities, these innate abilities that we all have. In the second part, next week, we'll be joined by our good friend Dennis Stone of America's Stonehenge. We will be talking about new things that have been found there regarding cobble on the bedrock, all kinds of things. So we'll be talking about that mystery location in New Hampshire. If you're in that area, I am here to tell you it is one of the coolest places in North America. Make sure to stop on by and check that out, folks. Tonight, in the second part, we are welcoming for the first time in a long time. We haven't had Mark Fiorentino on in a while, but he is the author of Master of Reality. It is basically a new take on Einstein's work and on the grand unified theory and a whole new concept of the grand unified theory and what that means, what those things mean to quantum entanglement, what they mean to the world of UFO, UAP, para, things like that. And that brings us directly into our first guest this evening, the great lady Ann Selene. You can find her work at medium.com at entomology. You can also find her work on her website, annselene.com. We have her on frequently to talk about just various research topics, various community things, stuff like that. She is with us tonight via audio. So welcome. How are you doing this evening, Ann?
Thank you so much. I love being here with you and with all of your listeners. It's so wonderful to be back. We're doing good here.
Always great having you on. And whenever I heard you are getting ready to give a presentation on the psychology of Bigfoot. And I loved just the title, which is why I lifted it and used it for the episode. Because the first thing I could see was Freud with a Bigfoot on a couch. You know, like as somebody who studied abnormal psychology, it's one of those like, yeah, that's the first thing I see is a Sasquatch on a couch talking about what ails him, you know.
I love that.
But when you talk about this, when you start getting into, and this is something that is regular course of conversation with us, just off air and on air whenever you're on, and is the whole concept of epistemology to begin with, and how belief is rooted, how that works. And for those that may not know what epistemology is, here's a quick breakdown. The branch of philosophy that studies what knowledge is, how we get it, and what limits we face. So, like, that has to do directly with every bit of paranormal research. That is what the knowledge is, how we get that knowledge, and then in addition to that, the limits we face with that knowledge, you know?
Yeah. It's an absolutely fascinating thing. I mean, this has been an incredible journey that I've been on, really diving into psychology and philosophy, and then of course epigenetics, because it leads us to epigenetics. Because with that, this is where knowledge is passed on.
Mm.
So in one of my previous, I mean, this presentation is kind of like a reworking of my previous presentation that I did about the uncanny valley and how our, ancient ancestors had been together. And we have this, uncanny is where something looks almost human, but it's not. And it really gives us those
Sure.
kind of ick feelings. Um, and that's really passed on down the line. There's been a couple really interesting, like one there's two science experiments that I know of right off the top of my head. And one is they had mice, and they would let it smell these cherry blossoms, but they would shock it, and then those mice went on to have babies. And then when those babies smelled cherry blossoms, they had a reaction.
Yeah.
And, you know, then there's also the mother tiger. There was two mother tigers and they were pregnant. One was able to get into REM sleep and the other one was always woke up. The cubs that were born to the mother who did not get to reach REM sleep, they had like no instincts. They had to be bottle fed, and it was just very difficult for them. And so in my own life as well, I learned, because I come from a long line of adoptions, and I had a great grandmother who she had a child, and she ended up having a lot of trauma in her life. And when we have trauma in our life, it really bathes our, the genetics and our eggs and our babies in those, hormones and everything. And then when they're born, they're carrying, that from our mother and grandmother and on down.
Yeah.
It alters the gene expression, I think is the proper term there.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's all kinds of things about that. So here again, our experiences and then how we're learning these things, and this is just the tip of the iceberg, because it's just so incredible how we come to have this knowledge. Because the other big thing is stories, because we always started off with, stories around the campfire. Our stories, our verbal, what we passed down was so valuable, which is, lost in time, and I think contributes heavy to historical amnesia. And, so there's just, gosh, my brain is going a million miles a minute because there's just so much to it.
Well, and, we've had you on numerous times, but we've specifically had you on before talking about the whole concept of traumatic displacement, the
Right.
idea of basically having what in remote viewing we would call an analytic overlay that exists over a traumatic moment. You gave the example of an ET experience that you swore you had for much of your life, that you later came to find out was a different horrible experience that you had put in the guise of something that you would understand.
Exactly. Yeah. So my body, our body is incredible. It wants to survive. We're built to try and survive. And so if we have a pre-existing bias, and our brains are, beautiful at meaning making, and they're wanting to fill in those puzzle pieces, it's going to grab what it can, what makes sense to us and what comforts us. And sometimes that can be hard for people to understand, because it can feel jarring and like you can't trust your body, or like it's lying to you. But that's not the case at all. It's a beautiful act of protection. At least that's what it's trying to be.
Well, now let's start taking this point of trauma. Let's start taking, because when we're talking about these traumas, one of the things that we're discussing is the idea of experience, whether it be
Right.
an ET experience, a paranormal experience, an experience with Bigfoot or Dogman out in the woods.
Mhm.
You have had what your brain psychologically would still consider trauma at that
Right.
point. A point that aesthetically changes what you think of reality.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, either way, it was scary,
Yeah.
but i- in when I look back at it and the way that I handled the perceived trauma, what I thought
Mm.
was the trauma was a lot easier to handle than the other. And, so that's why I say it beautifully tries. That's the intent. It tries. But it is still trauma and it's still something that we have to work through. But here again, it's what do you do with it?
Yeah. Yeah. And when it comes to those experiences specifically and how those experiences change the way somebody looks at things, because sometimes the experiences are wanted and warranted, sometimes they are
Right.
not. And
Yes.
it's fascinating to see that even in the world of uh UFO, UAP abduction, that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. And especially with the strange cases that oddly, invoking the name of Christ stops it.
Right. Right.
Not all of them. Some people would claim all of them, but not all of them. you know
Right.
so yeah, it's one of those, as we talk about all the time with you and other folks. Is it the fact of something using the trope of our mind? Is it something that we have created and given
Right.
purchase and I guess agency to in that kind of way?
Yeah.
Let's start getting into the psychology of this and how the psychology of experience begins to play in.
Yeah. When I mean, and that's a whole I'm starting my to pursue my bachelor's degree in psychology here in September. So I'm just 3 weeks away from that, which is so incredible, and I'm very excited. I know that I have a lot to learn still. So the things it's so funny because I get so excited. I learn these things and I want to share it with everybody, but at the same time, I recognize that there's such an overlap between psychology and philosophy and other knowledge that is more complex as you get deeper into it. And so everything that I share is definitely where I'm at right now in this journey and the beginnings of my understanding here. And the psychology of all this, when we experience something, gosh, I don't know which direction I want to go here. um
Let's
in
start with
in
the
one
first one.
way. Meaning.
I don't know what that means. I have no idea what that means, Ann.
Oh man. Well, let's start with the fact that, like, you have an experience and you aren't really sure what to do with it. Some people bury it. Some people really take that as, I want to connect with a
Mm,
group of other people, and so they do, and it's a very validating and it's a very amazing experience, and that can be important, but at the same time, it can also create people to also be really hungry for more experiences, more attention, more.
yeah.
And with Sasquatch specifically, I think that we have this intrinsic need to have the connection with Sasquatch. At least the people that are into that, they connect and feel that because he really represents the wild man archetype, and it connects us to our more wild nature. Because he's half animal or something,
Sure.
and half human, and he's completely connected with the earth, and we're not. I mean, we have artificial light, our feet are touching carpet or they're in shoes, and we're just so disconnected. And so I think that there's a part of us that really yearns to still connect with our more wild, our wild self. So psychologically, that's extremely powerful, and it can be healing when we do connect with the earth. But Sasquatch really fills multiple needs. So not just the wild man archetype, but also we have this need for fear. It's like an adrenaline rush. People love
Sure.
it. They want those spooky stories. They want those scary movies. And it's because of the rush of chemicals that we get, neurologically and what it does. And so, so then sometimes we're chasing, we can make things all demons because it's scarier that way.
Yeah.
Well,
and that does beg the question about such things, because I mean, we have that discussion regularly with Dan Harari from the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance, the whole idea of the dialogue of aliens being invaders, of us having to defend ourselves from them, things like that, that's a dialogue that when you drive that home, and when you just like, since day one, since Gort, that has been the dialogue. There have been ETs, but how do we treat them?
Right.
Right. So yeah, it's interesting because psychologically that is what we have been trained to.
Right.
And kind of the same concept that we used to talk about with Earl Grey, where people are like, oh, why do aliens kidnap and probe and tag people? It's like, why do we tag lions?
Right.
Yeah. There's a more intelligent species going out and snatching up a critter in the middle of the night, giving him some drugs, and he wakes up groggy and like, what the heck happened? What's this thing on my ear? Right. Like, so yeah, what's the difference there? And when you're talking about that motivation, especially, you get into that kind of dangerous spot of anthropomorphization.
Yeah.
Giving Sasquatch motivation.
Right. No, exactly. I mean, and so this is projection, I think we're getting into.
Oh yeah. No, absolutely.
Because, if you look at it, and I mean, obviously, yes, that's what we do. We capture animals, we tag them, and I understand the scientific need for that, tracking and stuff, especially like in cases of endangered species and stuff like that, and tracking numbers. But how scary it would be to be the rabbit and no longer the lion. And we all, like, this is getting into like the collective unconscious and like the hive mind and stuff like that. So on a massive scale, of course, aliens would be treating us the way that we treat animals. I mean, it makes sense to me. And, because that's the other thing, is like all the things that you fear, because everybody's experiences are different. And so if one person views the lens of, okay, we're going to take Dogman for an example, because I've seen this example. You have one person that might say that Dogman is really evil, and you might look at their life as being something that, maybe they were a cop and they had some really rough life work and experiences while they were in the force. And so they look at the other and different things as evil and bad. And so they're always on edge. And then if they have a background of liking scary movies and werewolves and whatever, it makes the perfect recipe.
Yeah.
But then you have another person who is an animal lover, keeps pets, and is, all for animal rights and all that kind of stuff, has a Dogman encounter and says that they are the most gentle beings and that everybody has them wrong. So how much of the encounters, how would I phrase that? How much of the encounters that people experience is born or experienced through the lens of our prior traumas or belief systems? Would it be how objective are the experiences? Is that the best way to put it?
Well, the issue that you come into to begin with is none of them are objective. They're an experience. So they're fully subjective to begin with.
So, okay.
You know, and that, hey, that's one reason why horribly eyewitness testimony is not a lock in the court of law, because the facts of what you saw are subject to your filter.
Oh yeah, well, not just that too, but like, okay, so when we get done with this interview and we say goodnight and I go tell Ken how it went, we can't guarantee that I will recollect the very beginning, the opening exact. Our brains are fallible and our memories are horrible.
Yep.
And I cannot paraphrase for the life of me. So like, I know this is true.
Well, yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting because my wife is like that. Being an improv sketch comedy writer, things like that, like she was for years and years. The example she gives is her brain is like an Etch-a-Sketch. It is readily erased. It is readily gone. And unless it's something that like life hangs on it, you know, or it has to do with the boy or something like that. Like she has notebooks. She has things that she keeps track of stuff with. Because that's just not where her brain space is. Her brain space isn't on remembering the minutia of people's work, you know, things like that. It's not what it's made for. That's not what it's there for.
Right.
And not everybody's brain space is for that. Most of us live in a very reactionary state. We go through much of life, most of our regular everyday, in a state of almost rote hypnosis. Where we are running through tasks that we run through every day. You know, this is what we do. Unless you're making a major decision, driving or something like that. Like even driving, you're in that state. You know?
Yeah. Well, I'm learning this new term called predictive. It's like predictive behavior. So this is where I automatically assume what you're going to do. I'm assuming what you're going to say next. I'm assuming, you know, because there's cultural plays where we act a certain way because we think that it's supposed to be a certain way. It's been that way for so long. And then that adds into the predictive thinking because we're used to that, you know, that script. And that, when you combine that and, you know, talking about being reactionary to how powerful our emotions are. I had there was a post online that I saw and I loved it. And it was talking about how our emotions are not fact. They are not fact.
No. No. They are a fully subjective filter through which you've chosen to see a situation. That is what your emotion is.
But so many people, whether you and I, let's say you and I are having a discussion and let's say your feelings get hurt, it's not fact. Just like, you know, the feelings that you had during a experience seeing a Sasquatch, it's not necessarily you know, fact. What it is it's something that's coming at you, and it's an opportunity to learn, oh wow, I'm feeling this emotion. Why am I feeling this emotion? If we get curious about it, then we step out of the reactionary, you know, thing, and then we can look at things on such a bigger, a deeper level, which this is one of the key things that I think needs to be in our field, is to learn how to step outside of yourself and externalize externalize things.
Yeah.
Externalization. This is another thing. It's called externalization, and it's within the post-structuralism framework. That's another brand new thing I'm learning. So it's exciting. I
It
love
is.
learning. I love knowledge. And it's so helpful. But here again, it makes sense to me, whereas it might not make sense to other people. It might not be a framework that, calls to or meshes with, others.
Well, and this is a reality that we have to deal with as investigators regularly. It's something that I bring
Right.
up whenever I talk about data versus evidence, things like that, and even
Mm-hmm.
just flipping that switch in your head. There were about 8 times just in the hour before we got on Zoom together tonight, and
Mm-hmm.
where I had to stop myself from responding on social media,
Yeah.
because there's somebody just using the word evidence. And it's like, it is not
Yeah.
evidence. Stop. Stop yourself now, you know? Because it's like the more you use the term, the looser it gets, and the less it is evidence. You're starting with it being evidence, so there's no option out. There's no
you
option out
know,
now. So now you have to squeeze everything to make it fit to be evidence. And when somebody takes the picture with the red circle around it and explains what's there and says what you have is not evidence, it's barely
right.
anomaly. Um,
Right.
here's what happens. Uh, that destroys a paradigm. And like we've talked about numerous
Yeah.
times, it doesn't have to destroy a paradigm. Doesn't have to,
Right.
like, we as investigators have to learn, like I've become very gentle in the way I explain things in pictures. Where but hey, wild that you caught this. It's a pretty wild
Mm-hmm.
anomaly. Doesn't happen all the time. Probably why it keyed your eye into it. But here's how you can explain it. Keep going out there. Keep looking for stuff. Keep looking up. That's where we get good data from.
Right.
But it's interesting because, yeah, it does directly confront people's belief and belief system, and their
Well,
experiential belief system. Even right now, this conversation is probably confrontational to quite a few people who are experiential believers. And
you
I'm an
know,
experiencer, and I'm a believer in numerous of these things. And
see, and I agree with what you're saying. And it's one of those things where, I have made a profound change. You have been right there throughout this entire process, this whole
absolutely.
journey. And it's been such an honor. But I started this as being an experiencer and a believer. And now I am definitely more, I'm a researcher for sure now,
Mm,
but what I'm finding, and I mean, and I want this out there because I want everybody to, like, we're human, we make
yeah.
mistakes, and I am, like I said, I'm in the process of learning. I'm not an expert by any means in any of this stuff, but I am now conflicted with using the word belief, and I'm having a hard time.
Yep.
I'm trying really hard to learn that the word belief does not belong in science, which I do cognitively understand that. However, I do notice that I can be talking about certain things and I say, oh, well, I believe this or I believe that.
Yeah.
And I'm catching myself being like, wait a second, that's not a scientific statement. And that goes against this new journey that I'm on. So it's not, for me, it's not like shattering this paradigm or my reality, or
Yeah.
there's no devastation or disappointment or anything. I have nothing but curiosity, but being able to have that be your reaction, to go to curiosity and to be able to stop and analyze yourself in such a way. I understand and respect that it is really difficult for a lot of people to do that. It's not for everyone.
It isn't for everyone. And it's interesting because it actually brings up a different psychological archetype, the shapeshifter archetype. And
Oh, yeah.
the whole idea of a character or force whose loyalty, identity, or form is constantly in flux. And
Hmm.
as an investigator, you have to very much be and embody the shapeshifter archetype. You have to be willing to
Right.
see things from the point of view of the scientist in the lab and the point of
Right.
data and data alone. And you have to be able to see things from the point of view of the experiencer that you're investigating, while at the same
Yeah.
time being willing to see things about the person that you're investigating,
Oh,
whenever they
yeah.
pop up. So, yeah, there is very much the shapeshifter archetype that you yourself have to learn to take part in and really embody in that kind of way.
Oh, yeah. No, and it's super important. I think one of the really good ways in doing it, there was somebody that came to, I think I might have said this on the last show. I can't remember. But somebody had come by our table at one of the events,
Mm.
and he is a professor, and he was talking about how a lot of people will enter university and they're doing me search. It's me, like they're researching themselves.
Yeah.
They're into a topic because of, and so what I have found is that here I have been able to step back and really look at myself in certain ways, and I look at my journey and I learn these different concepts like cognitive dissonance, where you're like torn between two things, and where it can be really difficult to
Take in new data.
Yeah, and then ambiguity intolerance, that's where you just cannot handle not having an answer. You're just sitting there in limbo. But a lot of our people that come to us, we don't have the answers. And I think that we do need to be better trained in ambiguity and tolerance, so that way we can hold space for them better and,
Sure.
and recognize. And so if we can see that within ourselves, if we can research that within ourselves, we are going to do a much better service to our community.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's just it. Once again, even learning how to talk about experience with people,
Yeah.
in that kind of way, learning to have the empathetic heart, because it can be tough. It can be tough,
Right.
especially whenever you are at a table for 2 or 3 days at a conference and hundreds of people a day are coming up and they're intimately sharing
Yeah.
things with you.
Exactly.
And I guess you can tend to prima facie judge here and there, and be like, yeah,
Yeah.
okay, I don't know about that one.
Right.
But at the same time, it's one of those, you kind of take every story and every encounter and every experience, in that kind of way if you're researching it,
Oh, yeah. Oh, my
you
gosh.
are totally intrigued by the story, but at the same time, everything has the same weight in that kind of way,
If we were able to look at how do I want to phrase this? uh, let's see. How about I say, we have an incredible opportunity as researchers, that our field is an amazing lab.
Yeah.
It's by interviewing so many people and seeing patterns emerge, and if we kept the data set properly, at least, and shared it with the others,
Yeah.
so that way we can cross-reference. Sharing is caring, guys.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it would make it, but I don't think that enough of us in the field look at it as a lab that we can really learn from and make big differences and discoveries. I don't know.
Well, I mean, there is the competition in the field, and I say it all the time. Probably the only community I belong to that is not motivated in that kind of way is the Psi community. And there
Right.
is a reason why science has begun to look that direction, why they have rapidly begun going
Yeah.
there. It is because of the interdisciplinary study and mutual work and mutual lab work
Yeah.
amongst the disciplines of it. There's data, and they've been
Hmm.
getting data, and they've been getting data for decades at different labs on it. So the fact that there is already collaboration, the fact that everybody there is in it for that unified purpose, makes a
Yeah.
vast difference. As to how science sees it, number
Right.
one, but also what data is available for science and for sciencing. Period. And
Hmm.
let's take things back to the beginning of this. And you had mentioned a concept, historic amnesia.
Yeah.
And I think it's a decent time to bring that up and focus on it a little bit, because I mean, not only culturally do we end up
Right.
with historic amnesia, because like the actual cultural memory of people is
Yeah.
very short lived. There's a
Oh yeah.
reason why like political spectra flip flop about every 8 to 10 years. It's because that's
Hmm.
about what your actual memory and good memory is about seven.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. No,
it kind of
exactly.
takes
I mean,
advantage of that. We're like, hey, wait a minute. I don't know if these guys really.
yeah.
When did these dudes start believing this? Because I didn't believe
Right.
this, and that's why I came in. You know, and it's interesting because we have a lot of historic amnesia. We forget a lot of these things. A lot of these things have been, once again, topics that have happened culturally for generations. These
Hmm.
experiences are things that, amongst numerous cultures, uh, it is not a point of mythology or storytelling. It is a point of history for the
Right.
cultures, but not for
It
us.
is.
And it's interesting because even whenever you start getting into Dogman and stuff like that, like as a Cajun,
Hmm.
we have Rougarou. Um,
Right.
and I brought it up in private conversations. We've brought it up on air, but and especially with Ken and with Lyle
Yeah.
Blackburn, and the idea of when you start looking at things like the Dogman Triangle here in Texas, you are directly surrounded by French and German settlers, people who had lycanthropic stories in their
Oh
histories.
yeah.
When you go to the Midwest, same thing. So
Yeah.
it's interesting how these literal stories and terrors of this continue in an epigenetic fashion,
Oh yeah. No,
but but
exactly.
but historically we don't remember. Like our grandparents didn't tell their kids the stories, so we didn't get the stories from our parents. um
Well, no, exactly. I mean, it's I mean, if we had I mean, I want to preface this, and I have
Please,
not
please.
I haven't vetted what I found. I need to look into it, but it really doesn't matter if it's true or not because it's just simply the concept, the thought of it. There was a post saying that AI data centers or something like that was buying up old books and they were scanning it into the AI, uploading it, and then they were destroying the old books. And it's not an unfathomable thing. I have no idea if it's real or not, but the concept of that I can see being a thing. It's devastating to think about, but that's something that we have done. We have, taken text and important documents and things have been destroyed time and time again. And this is, we have no idea about how the pyramids were really built and other lost, technologies and stuff. And then to your point too, I mean, even in my own family. So, we're I can say Bessarabia. So did you find that?
Oh yeah, I'm good.
Yeah,
And this is
see?
Tom's Hardware, folks, so it's not like it's like some, but like That's an act like you want to know about hardware, you go to Tom's Hardware, man. Um, like they do actual tech blogging. So yeah,
No, it's devastating. Definitely something to cry over. But it's so um in my own history, and I can say this, and nobody's going to really know what I'm talking about, but my family's from Bessarabia. You're going to have a lot of people going, "Where's that from?" Well, it was right on the border of what is now Moldova and Ukraine. So it was like Prussia. So Russia owned that whole area. And Catherine the Great had invited people over to that area to settle it. And so immigrants came from like Poland and Germany and all the other places. And my family happened to be one of them. So they lived in they're called the steppe people, and they were right along the Black Sea. So their culture was so rich in that area because so many different people came. And I could see the culture within my own family, German, Russian, Ukrainian, all this kind of stuff. And then we came to America in 1901, and my great grandfather or second great grandfather, he spoke only German and Russian, and then he had a son, my great grandpa, who kind of spoke half and half. But then my grandfather, who raised me along with my dad, no accent, no foreign language, no anything. And I can't find any original stuff from that side of the family. And it wasn't until I met Ken that I learned about a folklore within that culture, which was the Domovoi. And he's a little house spirit that, is adopted into the house, and you leave out bread and milk and all that kind of stuff. And this is my own family that has all this rich culture. And I'm so far disconnected from it. And that's just me as an individual.
Yeah.
But as all of us, as humanity, to all of history, I mean, there's so much.
It does not take long. The example I give the example all the time as a Cajun. Feel free to travel across the border into Louisiana and find me somebody that is fluent in Cajun. I'll wait.
Right.
Like I have 100% Cajun family. They don't speak to the point that there is like a revival in rural schools. Like I gave money to the town of Mamu, to the Mamu Elementary program to bring Cajun back into the school.
That's awesome.
To make it a class, because it's literally a culture that in one generation, generation, both of my grandparents it was their native language.
Yeah.
English was their second language. So
it's devastating.
It doesn't take long for historic amnesia to take place, for us to forget a cultural tie, for us to forget a cultural story, for us to forget the root of where something comes from.
Yeah. Well, and it's so important too, like in our medical field, because there's things that are done now that they're like, oh, we can use, these special frogs and do trials for, I don't know what disease it was, but, it was a promising outlook. And people of certain tribes knew that this was, it's like willow bark and aspirin, at least that we know and have. But I mean, the cures and different things, I mean, imagine where we'd be today if we would have been able to keep all the knowledge that has existed. I mean, I think the world would be so different.
Indeed. And at the same token, there's a lot of knowledge that like we've scooted aside very recently, like it's fascinating to think about the fact that we lost Martin Van Buren, our president, to an assassin's bullet, but it wasn't the bullet. It was the infection from the surgeon who kept sticking his finger and uncleaned probes inside of him. And the one doctor that kept saying, you should really wash that. There's some new science. He's like, you are
Right.
crazy right now. He has an imbalance of phlegm in his body. He has an imbalance
Yeah.
of phlegm to plasma, and that's what's going on. I don't know what you're talking about with
Yeah.
these little things crawling around on stuff.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Nope. It's just dirty air.
That's very recent. Like, that's in the last 100-something years, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
It's
that was the
wild.
early 1900s. So it's not like it was that long ago. We
Oh
forget
yeah.
the
No,
fact
the
that 500 years ago, everybody knew. There was no question. If you questioned it, you were burned at the stake or excommunicated by the church. But the earth was
yeah.
flat and was the center of the universe, and everything revolved around it. That was the fact 500-600
Yeah.
years ago. So when you look at the arc of humanity and these things that, yes, are fact, don't get me wrong, like, hey, numerous people considered the earth to not be the center of things, and knew that the earth was a
check this
sphere
out.
before science and Magellan.
Right. Well, and this too. All right. So the acceptance and public habit. This is of hand washing. Okay. Germ theory was 1860s and 1870s, but it wasn't until the 1920s that soap companies and public health groups began teaching everyday people to wash their hands regularly. Yeah. I mean, I laugh, but I mean, it's just amazing.
Yeah. No,
we're an incredible species.
That's just it. This stuff is all very recent. Even our understandings of psychology have
yes.
drastically changed since the day of Freud.
Incredibly. There's.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, there's so many different theories. There's so many different practices. I mean, you've got CBT, DBT, motivational interviewing, and narrative therapy, which, there's a group of these things that are called evidence-based, and then the other ones that are just emerging, and other ones that are considered just philosophy. And so, to touch on what I said in the beginning as well about starting my bachelor's degree in psychology, I am not going to become a practicing psychologist, therapist, whatever person. I'm going as a into research psychology. Ultimately, of course, in my dream of dreams, I would be able to do a direct entry PhD somewhere and go straight into the lab, because I think that there are so many more frameworks that haven't been even thought of yet. I mean, it's just incredible. There's just so much. And so hopefully one day I can either make something new or contribute to an emerging something or whatever. But again, it's just going to be another tool in that.
Well, and when you're talking about, to bring this home in the last 10 minutes, Ann, the psychology of Bigfoot, the psychology of para, when you're talking about all this stuff, yeah, it comes down to experience. It comes down to open mind, quite literally, and the idea of, yes, how do we remind researchers in the lab? How do we remind psychologists, sociologists, people like that there is something different going on, period. And I think that a lot of the consciousness research going on right now is going to crack a lot of the nuts of psychology and its connection to these phenomena. Because like I rotely say all the time, I believe that there is a large hominid being known as Sasquatch roaming the woods of North America and beyond. But I think that there is also something else that is willing to use the tropes of our minds and our willingness of experience as an entryway. Take that how you will, good entryway, bad entryway, what have you. But when it comes to the idea of summoning orbs, when it comes to the idea of Bigfoot appearing and disappearing through a portal, through other means like that, when it comes to the shared experience of Bigfoot and UFOs or Bigfoot and orbs, that kind of stuff. I think that concept of us partaking in that makes a lot more sense at that point.
Right. I mean, and for me, I definitely, I do believe that there is something out there that is a physical, I think Bigfoot is a physical thing because of my experience. I do believe that there could be something else out there that has that ability. You want to call it a shapeshifter or whatever, spirit, something.
Yeah.
But if we can look at it like the scientists do, like the physical anthropologists, the people that are actually out there in the field looking at the actual zoological stuff. And then you also have the people that are, researching the more paranormal and the spiritual and the whatever. But then you add in the psychology to it, because then we're understanding how how does the human brain and body and then mind handle anomalous experience in general. Because then if we can deduce certain things that we can then put, okay, that was a regular physiological reaction, psychological reaction, we can put that aside and look at what is left. And if we are able to do that using all the tools in the box, that is how I believe that we can actually come to the conclusions that we're searching for.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and that's just it. And once again, that begins to, and not that both are not anomaly.
Mm-hmm.
Not the physical and the non-localized are not both anomaly. Both of them are, absolutely. But we've got to be able to differentiate between the two of them. We've got to be able to scientifically, and that's the only way I'm using this term right now is scientifically. We've got to be able to call a spade, a club, a heart, a heart.
Yes.
We've got to be able to categorize it, because if we can't, then we can't study it. We've got to be able to categorize things between physical presence experience or experience married with para.
Right.
Because that's what I've said the whole time, is that if you have an experience, even if you have a para experience, if I saw orbs in the woods, you have a very clear and distinct place to begin investigating. You marry a Bigfoot with that. Which side of the anomalies do you begin investigating on?
Right.
Because now you got two anomalies occurring simultaneously. So at that point, I think you have to put them into a different category, and you have to start looking at them much more on a psychological basis, but not only just on a psychological basis, on the basis of possible manifestation of experience.
Yeah. Yeah, no, all of that is perfectly put, and I agree with you 100%.
Now, the last few minutes, and let's kind of surmise this for folks, because I mean, there's been a lot here. We've talked a lot. Once again, neither one of us is saying that experiences are not real, that experiences do not happen. Not one bit is that the case tonight. We
experience all kinds of things every day.
Exactly.
And,
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, we experience things every day, all different kinds of things, everything, it's a matter of what we do with it. It's a matter of how we choose to interact with it and share it with the world. And even if, like in my case, even though I found out that, at least in that one scenario with there's a shadow entity and a thing at the end of my bed, even though that was not paranormal and it was my brain protecting me from a very unfortunate event with another human, it taught me things. that experience, when I believed it was paranormal, absolutely served a purpose for that time.
Yeah.
And then when it was revealed to me that it was something else, that experience served a purpose for a time. I learned a lot about that, learned a lot about myself. And so, I mean, our experiences are extremely important. They help shape us into who we become.
Yeah, they are massively, massively important. And you know, uh it's interesting. I was just watching Deadpool Wolverine yesterday, and that was part of the lesson in that.
Nice.
Whenever he was like, "Hey, I mentioned that you guys might be able to fix his timeline. Can you go do that?" She's like, "There's no need to do that. If we did that, he wouldn't be the dude that just came and helped you today.
Yeah,
Like by
yeah,
definition, he
exactly.
wouldn't be that guy."
I love
So
that.
like it kind of intrinsic that his
Mhm.
timeline goes away,
Yeah.
to him being who he is. And that's just it. It's one of those, even you and I have come to a different understanding of my shadow person experience,
Right.
to the point of it being me, like an egregore that I had created to attain something, that
Yeah.
just wanted me to stay in that dark place and not move forward in
Yeah.
life. And even my coming to understand that understands my personal traumas and the things that I did to
Hmm.
myself in a different way. So, but does that remove the experience? No, the experience still fully
No.
happened. It still fully happened. Like there was something there. I didn't imagine it.
Yeah.
I
Exactly.
didn't imagine that experience.
Right. And it's an incredible thing. Like, it was there.
Yeah.
You experienced it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we now presume the whys or know the whys or whatever, but how did it happen? How was it created? How was it there? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
When we see something that's physical and it's right there, how was it there? That's the next part. Like,
It is.
I'm just, what is it, endlessly curious.
Well,
And so no matter what the why is, I still want to know every little nook and cranny of what makes the rock a rock.
yeah. Yeah, precisely. Precisely. And it is the pressures, it is the true not only makeup and consistency of the rock, but what it
Yeah.
went through to form it into that rock.
Yeah.
You know, and it's interesting because it
Mhm.
does change you. But at the same time, how is it that we bring these things into being, and
Right.
understand the fact that yes, we can manifest things in our life, we can make this stuff happen. Most of that has to do with whether or not you are aligned with the goal to begin with. And that even
Yeah.
comes to the point of personal help, spiritual help, anything else. If you aren't aligned with that goal, it probably ain't going to happen.
Yeah.
So,
Nope. I
um,
agree with that.
and yeah, yeah, it's interesting to consider what our minds create, what we allow them to create, the patterns that we allow them to bring in, and the apophenia, the
Hmm.
connections that we make with those patterns. The apophenia, I mean, you've got the pareidolia, and that's where we see the faces in the clouds, and the disembodied demonic Nephilim in the trees, and the
Yeah.
shadows, and everything else. But it's the apophenia that takes that to the next level, and truly begins the narrative at that point.
Yeah.
And that's where we start getting the conspiracy theory. That's where we start getting the deep
Hmm.
rabbit holes, things like that. So
Exactly.
it is a psychological phenomena at the same time that it's a physical phenomena. So it's,
Yeah.
yeah.
Exactly. It's fascinating.
Well, I want to thank you as always for coming on, talking about these fascinating things, being willing to just publicly and openly explore this, because it is, I think, a
Oh,
point of conversation that we have to be willing to openly have. We've got to be willing to peel it back and talk about it.
Well, it means the world to me. I appreciate the opportunity, and I hope that my openness and being willing to say things like I don't know, or I just learned, or I'm trying to figure out, or when I do go on podcasts and I ask the host, is this the proper term? Is this, am I understanding this correctly? Yeah. These are all things that all of us should be doing. And I hope that because I know a lot of people can experience embarrassment and different things from that, but it's how we learn, and it's how we, grow in this field, in this community. And the support is incredible. And yeah, so anyways, it's an honor to be here. I hope that, other people are inspired from this episode to stay curious, because that's really so important. That's the core of all of this.
It is. And before we let you go, let everybody know where they can go to follow your work, where they can go to read your articles, all that kind of good stuff.
So I write my articles over on medium.com. I am under entomology over on Medium. I do have a website, which is just annselene.com. You can also find me on Facebook under Ann Selene. I am on Instagram as well. I believe that one is entomology.
It is.
Those are my main loves for social media connection.
All right. Well, thank you so much as always, Ann. We'll be sending links here in just a little while for the episode, all that kind of stuff. It's always great having you on. Take care. Love to the family. Say hi to Ken. All that kind of good stuff.
Thank you. Love you back.
All right. We'll talk to you soon.
All right.
Bye-bye. Always great catching up with Ann Selene, folks. And, it really is the fact of we have to be willing to have honest conversations with ourselves. We've got to be willing to take a step back, 3 deep breaths. We have to understand that questioning these things is okay. Questioning as our good friend Earl Grey used to say on the show all the time, as we say on the show all the time, like, I don't believe UFOs are real. Belief implies faith. I know UFOs are real because there is a preponderance of evidence that there is something in our skies that we don't know what it is. So, and when you consider things like that, much like psi abilities, I don't believe they're real. I know they're real. I got a penny on my wall that I stuck there 3 days ago, and it's still stuck there. There ain't no glue on it, nothing like that. So there's no belief there. There's knowledge. I know this to be true because of my experience with it. And we have to remember that always, that experience is there, but we also have to understand why we've come to understand that experience in the way that we've understood it. We have to be willing to allow that lens to be shaped, polished, to move as time moves, as we change. So when we come back from this quick commercial break, everybody, we will be joined by Mark Fiorentino. We will be discussing his book, Master of Reality. We will be discussing the idea of new ways to look at Einsteinian physics. Is Einsteinian and Newtonian physics as we know it the end-all of everything, or is there something else around the corner that may change it all? That and so much more with Mark Fiorentino right after this.
The key to good science is good research. At the heart of good research is a good data set. With the field observation and encounter log from Curious Research, you can easily keep track of your investigative information all in one place, making it easier to review cases and readily see comparisons and contrasts between them. Whether out in the woods squatching, in a back room gathering EVPs, or using high-tech gear to track UFO, UAP activity, this easy-to-carry, pocket-sized scientific data log is the perfect companion for any field researcher. You can find your copy of the Curious Research Field Observation and Encounter Log at Amazon.com or visit the official Curious Realm store at curiousrealm.com/store to reserve your copy for yourself, your family, or a mind that you want to open. That website again is curiousrealm.com/store.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back from that quick commercial break. Thank you so much for staying with us. And also thank you so much to our sponsors, especially True Hemp Science. If you're a user of CBD products like I am, everybody, stop on by TrueHempScience.com today. Christopher Lynch and True Hemp Science use a spagyric process by which every part of the hemp plant is used. That's every part, folks. The seeds, stems, buds, leaves, roots, fibers. Every part is used, combusted, and reused in a spagyric process where everything comes out complete with terpene profiles and more. I have been using the products from True Hemp Science for at least the last 5 years, and traveling the country to dispensaries, they are by far, personally, the best CBD product that I have found. Their terpene profiles are, I challenge you to find another CBD product with terpene profiles. There's my challenge to you folks. You probably won't. Stop on by TrueHempScience.com today. Use the code CURIOUS7. That code will get you 7% off your entire cart of $50 or more, as well as free edibles on the way out the door. Our guest in this segment is the amazing Mike Fiorentino. He is the author of Master of Reality, Super Relativity, Unified Field Theory. This is, we've had him on before. We've discussed this topic with him, and it is a fascinating theory. We will be getting into the intricacies of it, the inspiration of it, how it came to be, and what it's all about. So welcome back to the show. How are you doing, Mark?
Fine, thank you. Doing good.
Well, I am excited to have you back. It's been way too long since we had you on. I remember when I first had you on and read Master of Reality, I thought it was a great way to bring the work of Einstein into a new world. We are now looking at all kinds of things. The one that I quote regularly whenever we hear on the show and on whenever I speak at conferences is quantum entanglement. Like the spooky action at a distance from unified field theory that Einstein spoke about so many times, where we influence and particles influence each other despite distance. And that has now been proven to the point of Nobel Prize. So how does your work relate to that? How did you first come to this field of study, Mark, and what inspired super relativity? How did you first come to that understanding?
Well, it started, I guess, when I was 10 and I read about Einstein, and I fell in love with the idea of a unified field theory, his version, not the modern day standard model version, which is convoluted and it's got elements within it that don't really make sense and shouldn't be solved. I go and worked on the original Einstein version, which electromagnetism and gravity emerge as aspects of a single fundamental field. And that's my work in a nutshell, proving that. And proving that the forces of nature all come from the motion of particles and the structure of particles. So that's how I got into it, that early study. And then years afterward, I became curious about anti-gravity. And I thought, well, he who knows about anti-gravity knows about the unified field theory, because that's going to be part of it. So I began reading about UFOs and the technology as observed, and realized it's a spatial bias drive. There's some way they're generating the anti-gravity field using known forces of nature that we haven't figured out yet. So that's how I got into the whole thing. As for things like EPR, I've studied EPR because that's a quantum puzzle that I need to solve. And I've written one paper, but that still really only confirms what Einstein said and the others. And I'm looking for a solution that's deterministic and sensible. And at some point, I will get back to that paper and finish that.
Well, and especially whenever you're talking about, I'm a huge fan of Nikola Tesla. I don't know too many electronic designers, things like that are not a fan of Nikola Tesla. But that was a driving force in his work, was basically the same concept of unified field theory. The fact that electron flow and magnetism are inherently tied together, that there is no difference between those forces, that they are the same, that they are one and the same.
Well, one generates the other. The electrostatic field charge, which particles are made of, all of them, as I have worked out in one of my papers called the slip wave, is the cause of particle motion. And magnetism only occurs when charge moves. And charge moves like this in a spiral, in a twisted spiraling type. And when that happens, the space turns around.
Yeah.
And is bent in a way so that it creates a magnetic dipole. And it's a rotation of space. So charge moves, space rotates as it moves around it and spins. So that's been worked out. That's going to be one of my papers. That's no problem to explain. And once I get it all fully derived and so forth, that's going to be a major breakthrough. And then gravity, I have a story about gravity. You're going to love this story.
Please.
It's a very true story. It's really interesting. So I'm writing the book that you read, the first book, and I get to the part where I'm writing about gravity. And it's storming outside. And I suddenly realize in one sentence I could describe the cause of gravity, which basically I typed out. Whenever unbalanced charges move in an accelerated motion, this causes a contraction around that particle in all directions uniformly, because that particle, as it moves forward, is contracting due to the Lorentz contraction and the work coming from the Ehrenfest paradox, which talks about this special rotating contraction ability that Einstein loved. And I wrote that sentence down, and when I hit the period, a thunderbolt hit right outside my house. And I mean, it shook the whole house. And I looked down and I says, I got it right, didn't I?
Right. Well, and especially whenever you're talking about that helical motion that you're describing, there's a beautiful, beautiful model out there of the solar system that shows the solar system in motion. I've got it up on screen right now for those of you that are watching, not listening. But it basically shows the sun traveling in a line, because we always think about the ecliptic of the solar system. We see models of it. We see it on plane. But no, we are traveling through interdimensional space and at the same time orbiting around the sun as we travel through interdimensional space. So it's much more like a six-way helix, like DNA traveling through, like a DNA strand traveling through the cosmos is what we are.
That's a beautiful image. I like that.
And that's basically the same thing that you're talking about with an atom, anything like that. Like they are operating in the same way. When you're talking about an electron and its subparticles, they're traveling in the exact same way, So
very similarly, and the cause of their motion is basically of the planet's motion is they were put into motion, but ultimately we're dealing with gravity. Gravity's pulling, it's causing them to fall. Yeah, and they're continually falling.
It's a controlled fall, same as any satellite that we put into orbit.
Well, and I worked out the same problem with particles, and I discovered that there's a new type of gravity. A linear gravity that comes out of the poles, and that's what's causing their motion. That's going to be a big, huge discovery once that hits the papers. because that is a problem that Einstein worked on. And in his, and I thought, well, he must have thought of this. Just you got to explain this. And I keep thinking this to myself. You have to know the cause of particle motion because it's the key to unlocking all the forces and energies of the universe. And so I went reading through his papers, and I found a unified field theory based on Riemann metrics and distance parallelism in the year 1930. And the last two sentences was a jackpot for me. Those last two sentences said, nevertheless, I'm still far away from claiming the physical validity of the equations I derived.
Mm-hmm.
The reason for that is that I did not succeed in deriving equations of motion for particles. So
Yeah.
he realized it too.
Oh yeah, yeah, and was honestly quite afraid, because there were other people working on unified field theory. There were other people working on E equals mc squared. There were other people, and his problem was kind of the same as my problem, Mark. And I'm no Einstein at all. I'm nowhere near an Einstein. I'm maybe like 3 steps under your local grocery store manager. Not Einstein. All right. But what I get is the concepts of things. Einstein was no mathematician. There were mathematicians in Germany and things like that who were burgeoning on the exact same race of thought that he was for physics and for our understanding of the universe. And they had the math down. So he was actually quite afraid at the time. Like you're saying, you're busy figuring out this math. You can't publish your paper till you have the math. He published the paper, but didn't have the derivations for these sine cosine waves of other particles, things like that, to support it. So without the mathematical derivation, there is plenty of hypothesis, but there's no data there to support that hypothesis. And that's the worrisome part of releasing that at that point.
Well, yeah, and you, in order to do that, in order to solve those problems, you have to come up with field equations.
Yeah.
And I now have my own field equations, and I'm testing them by deriving the particle mass, magnetic moments, alpha.
Yeah.
I have a derivation for alpha. I still have to test it to make sure it's closed. That's what gets people, because they don't ever fully close it. If you have one input that's not explained, they'll throw it into the garbage can. Doesn't matter. You can't pick anything and make it work. It's all got to fall out of the geometry. And I got to tell you, that's really, really hard.
Well, and I was gonna, we have to ask, because I'm sure right now the audience's noodles are overcooking, but because I am one of those, I hold no college degree, man. I went to college long enough to be a doctor. I hold no college degree, and I know a lot of things about a lot of stuff. And years ago on my old Talking Sound show, my old Talking Sound podcast about my industry, I put up a calculation. I did a whole episode on what it takes to be a professional, because there was once like a calculation, you need 10,000 hours to be a professional. That comes from the old school thought of apprenticeship into craftsman, into master craftsman. You went 10,000 hours doing each one of these levels. And when you break that down on a screen, it's basically doing something 30 hours a week, 5 years. So if you have been, what I'm getting to here, Mark, is your degree in astrophysics, in physics, in anything like that. No,
I have no degree in any of that.
But it does not devalue your work. It doesn't change your work. You have been working, once again, in learning these derivations and learning this math and learning these things.
Well, I studied it independently.
No. But I don't, that's what I'm saying, though. That's what I'm saying, though. Like, I learned WordPress and designing websites by myself. I had somebody who kind of took me on my way, but from there I learned, and I've been doing it for 10 years. And you know what? I can say I'm a professional web designer. I have put enough
I
time
know a
in
lot of programmers
and
that
enough,
did the
but
same
that's
thing.
just it. You don't need a college degree to do this, is what I'm saying. Like, you can train yourself. You can learn the classes. You can go online. You can learn this math. So you have put enough time and effort over not just Master of Reality, but the new book you're working on, the work that's bridging the two together, and the work that's going beyond that. Over the years, you have put in the time to be called a professional in this.
Well, I got to publish.
Yeah.
It has to be
Absolutely.
confirmed independently for this type of work. I mean, I can speculate up the yin yang for all you want. But in the end, I realized that this, all the way to win this battle is to play by their rules.
Yeah, absolutely.
And officially get this stuff published. And it's hard work, but I'm betting everything on it.
Well,
I'm spending the rest of my time that I have left, if I have to get this job done, because I've worked it out and I realized if this theory is correct, which I'm very certain it is, it's going to be able to solve just about every major problem in physics. I went through and made a list of over 452 problems I can solve using this theory. Major things that are open right now that they're stumped on. And I've shrunk it down to a list of 25 that most of them I have some level of completion or already wrote papers on. It's just closing the gaps in those papers in order to make them publishable. Because right now they're using AI to analyze papers, and AI is good at, it could go through every line, every parameter, and if it finds something wrong, that's it, it's over. So it's getting easier and easier for physicists to do this type of peer review. So it has to be flawless. So I'm using AI to do the analysis to make sure there are no gaps. Otherwise, as an independent physicist, I'm going to be overly scrutinized.
Oh, absolutely.
You can bet on that.
1,000%. However, this is the one thing that I will say. There have been numerous times I could sit here while we talk and bring up headlines over the last few years of like the 12-year-olds right here in Texas that like broke the what was it? It was like actually discovering that something different about Pythagorean's theorem, that like the Pythagorean theorem has been slightly wrong the whole time. It's like these girls were like 12 years old,
using these new computer programs, you can make great discoveries.
There was no computer program.
These
girls figured that it's out on their own with actual just math and paper and pen, man. So
amazing.
And it's one of those like scientists just have to go like, well, yeah, I'd love to say that they're wrong, but they're absolutely right. Like, look at the math. There it is. So it comes down to the math, and it comes down to whether or not the math is sound or not. And math is math. There's no faking math. There's no pardon my language, Google. There's no half-assing math. You can't trust me. I know. I tried half-assing math. I got a half-ass grade in it.
Well, you can do things and get the right answer and it's not defensible.
Well, that was always my math teacher's issue, was this is great that you got the right answer. Now show and support your work.
Right.
And if you can't show and support every step, and if there's not a closed loop inside of there, then it's not sound and it's not right.
Yeah.
You have to go back to square one.
My earlier papers, when I had them reviewed by some scientists I know, they said, where did this come from? And I had to look back, and I looked back and I said, well, that's my new constant. And then I went back through my notes and realized the AI didn't figure that out. I told it was going to be there and to look for it and what it would be like.
Yeah.
And then it found it. With that information, was able to find it, but that's still not good enough.
Yeah.
Got to actually derive, because that's just doing dimensional analysis and inputting a parameter that gets the right answer. you have to independently derive that. And I know there's a lot of math, probably don't want to get into this, but basically it's a more complicated problem than just finding the right answer. Like you say, you got to explain it thoroughly, completely, fully, no gaps, nothing. It's got to be full and complete. Otherwise, it's not going to be accepted.
Well,
and that's the task.
Well, it's the fact that the and I'll bring it up right here, the key parts of derivation, speaking of AI. But there it is. And it's the fact of not only do you have to describe a particle and its function, you have to describe a particle's source. You have to describe what it's derived from. Great, cool. Like, does this particle get created by the collision of proton-neutron? How does the particle get created?
Oh boy, you're getting into something. I've looked into that, and it's going to be hard to explain, but
it's not easy.
You can't create, and you can't destroy a particle.
Yeah.
Ultimately, you can transform them from one thing to another with collisions, but I've run up against, I don't know if it's a hard wall or not, but it may be where the theory stops being just the theory of man-made and becomes intelligent design. And that particles, it's so hard to explain without getting really mathematically technical, which may be above what everybody wants to hear.
Give us the overarching concept of it.
You can't, there is no way on its own for a particle to just create and be there. And there's no way that it can be destroyed, because if it could be, then the universe would die. So that is by, in my opinion, intelligent design. But then who made those particles? Who made all the particles in the universe? There is no way, I'm not sure at this point mathematically, that they could just emerge from nothing.
Well,
they have to be created. And that's where I'm at right now. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to prove that, but I'm going to try.
Well, now, granted, this is where hypotheticals come in and where hypothesis exists in science. Because by Newtonian physics, you are absolutely correct. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only change form. That's how we get the mass energy release of atomic weapons, atomic power, all that kind of stuff is from that concept. We are changing the form of that and harnessing the power when we do that. And this kind of rings also to the greater connection of your super reality work, which, as you were saying earlier, ventures into the world of paranormal, and why I've said since quantum entanglement has won the Nobel Prize that scientists are now running to the field of paranormal research, because there are things that we have been talking about that, no, we can't prove. They are utterly hypothesis, but they suddenly make a whole lot more sense now that spooky action at a distance has been proven. And that was something that was hearsay. It was something that was along the line of super strings. We're sure it's math, but we don't know for sure.
I don't know that they actually believe it's spooky. Einstein coined that phrase.
Yeah.
If you get really into it, they're not saying that there's a spooky action at a distance. Somehow they're entangled.
Yeah.
They're considered as one.
Oh no, exactly.
It went beyond
spooky
physics,
action at a distance.
You know, where two photons are created and entangled and they're treated as two.
Mm-hmm.
But in quantum physics, that whole system is thought of as one unit. And that's why, mathematically speaking, the instantaneous, you change one and you affect the other.
Yeah.
But there's no real good explanation of how that actually works without them actually really being physically entangled.
And granted, the image that I have on screen now, folks, is the image of two entangled photons. This is what won the Nobel Prize. And once again, this is, I think, what brought science running down our path, was This is a symbol. It doesn't kind of look like a yin yang. It's not like, oh, if you squint and lean to the left, it kind of looks like a yin yang. It is a yin yang. This is the symbol used for entanglement and the idea that good is part of evil, evil is part of good. We're all part of each other. We all influence each other for millennia by Buddhism for the last couple thousand years. So the idea that this metaphysical symbol is an actual representation of a scientific concept and now proven to be is wild, And it takes us into a whole new realm, man. And when you start talking about super relativity, when you start talking about this idea of energy cannot be created or destroyed, I'm a former Catholic seminarian, and I have gone beyond the point of religion and faith when it comes to the other side for me. We are all a unique vibration in the universe. Every one of us. We all make up a harmonic chord in the universe. Without us, without you, Mark, the universe does not resonate the same way. Now, here's the thing. When you die, that's just this corporeally bound quantum field of matter. Your actual vibration and the gong that started sounding when you were born still sounds. Your vibration continues. You have only changed form. Your energy has only changed form.
Consciousness remains. It'll survive. The soul.
Like, it cannot be created. By definition, you cannot be created or destroyed. What is integrally you? So, like, that's where I see your work going, is the fact of proving that. And the fact of this yin yang, like, we're all a part of that. We're all a part of something greater than ourselves, that we only become that big pink swath once we cross that barrier from the green. You know?
Well, I'm working on determinism in quantum mechanics, a work that has been done by Gerald Hooft, who won the Nobel Prize, but couldn't completely finish this part. He's been working on it for many years, so I decided to work on it. And if I can solve the problem, I'll send him the paper and let him look at it. And it should be something he's very interested in. It's a very big open problem in physics. And basically, things aren't random. You know, proving that things don't happen randomly or accidentally. It's a cause and effect, deterministic. And a lot of physicists feel this way, even though quantum mechanics keeps, winning the day with its predictions, it doesn't explain how anything works. And that's not good enough. That's an incomplete theory, as Einstein said it was. And so it's going to have to be extended. And I intend on doing that work to extend it, as well as relativity, and merge the two, which has to happen, and I believe is doable. And it's a lot of work I got ahead of me, so I'm going to need the time. Hopefully I will be granted enough time to complete these tasks, because it'll make a big difference. It'll be like disclosure for physics.
Yeah.
Disclosure day.
Well, and I just brought up the Medium article about deterministic brain, why you can't predict your own decisions. And we have some pretty wild predictive models out there right now, Mark, that are very AI driven. To the point that, like, and you can look this up, people. Your phone is not listening to you, pushing ads to you, believe it or not. All right? What it is predictive algorithm. And that's what makes it more disturbing than them just listening to your phone, man, is that you have done enough online browsing, searching, things like that you now have a fingerprint to the way you think. And not only that, but a metric map to the way you think when you think it. And that's what pushes those ads to you. Where it's like, well, how did it know I was just talking about that? It's like, oh, well, you're usually talking about that about this time. And the predictive algorithms in that go deep, man. I remember, because like I said, and my audience knows, I work live events for a living. And a lot of them are high tech. I live in Austin. I do a lot of high tech. I did a lot of military, a lot of presidential stuff, a lot of things with military and NDAs, all kinds of things. And I can talk about generalities. I can't talk about specifics. Like there was one conference that I used to work at that was AI in the military. Buddy, they didn't even have PowerPoints anymore because of Edward Snowden. And I was brought in as it was the cheesiest gig all year, man, because I was brought in for 5 days to operate PowerPoints, and there were no PowerPoints.
What are they using instead?
It was all holder slides. It was just like, here's so-and-so talking. Or like, here's the lunch slide, lunch brought to you by Lockheed Martin, things like that. So it was hilarious. Just the fact of like, wow, this is what I'm brought in for, is to bring up these just still slides, not full presentations. But they would talk about those predictive algorithms. They would talk about how they're mass swathing data. One of the most interesting things that I heard, and this was in the day of BlackBerry. This was before the full smartphone that we have now.
Right. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
And there was a former head of the FBI cybercrimes department. This was like a white hat hacking event put on by UT. And he was there talking about cybercrimes and tracking people. This was probably about 2012. He said 5 years ago, this was 2012. He was like 5 years ago with 85% accuracy, we could predict where you would be in 5 minutes. We don't need your cell phone, anything from previous cell phone data, from previous Google searches, from previous MapQuest things, like just from your general comings and goings in the world. In 1997 or 2007, in 2007, the FBI could, with an 85% accuracy, predict where an individual would be within the next 5 to 10 minutes. That's crazy. So I can't imagine where they are now with the technology and the predictive AIs and things like that. That was just with general metadata from a cell phone in your pocket.
They shouldn't be able to collect all that. I don't agree with that.
And granted, they just put up the
all conversations, all emails, all video.
That's why Edward Snowden's still on the run, dude. Like he revealed a lot. But that's just it. And when you look at the way that these systems at speed can call this data, can pull this data, the way at which we can at speed process data, when you start looking at quantum computing, Mark, when you start looking at photonic computing, like minus silicon, that kind of stuff, it's fantastic and it's amazing, and it's literally the stuff of science fiction. You're talking petaflop. The machine I was telling you about, the NVIDIA RTX that you can get at home. It's a home AI machine. I was looking at one. It's about the cost of a Mac. It's about $3,500. It is a petaflop. You have a on your desktop in something the size of a cigar box.
And make those crays look like
you have a petaflop of processing power. That's crazy. That's insane. I remember when my computer had a turbo button that took it to 286. All right, or 256. Sorry, math nerds. Took it to 256. So I could game
286 CPU and 386 and 486.
But that's just it. Like we're looking at that within the last 20 years. We're looking at AI and the information chain that we have utterly changing in the last 10 years. Where physics will be, where your research will be in the next 5 is phenomenal to think about.
I'm hoping to crack physics wide open and create a new age of discovery. That's the main goal, and I think I have a very good shot at it.
Well, let's start getting into some of the functionality of this and what super relativity means when laid on top of unified field theory, and why we need unified field theory to step to super relativity, Mark.
Well, I think that it's what I'm doing basically is fundamental ontology. In other words, I'm asking the question over and over again relative to particles, space, energy, force. What is physical reality? Or what physical reality is? What is it? That is what the question that keeps going. What is a particle? How does a particle work? How does a particle move? What is its structure? This is all to do with physical reality. It's ontology, I guess, fundamentally. And if you answer these questions, then you become the master of reality, like my book title states. I mean, ultimately, I guess that's the goal I'm shooting for, is to fundamentally understand the universe. And that means basically forces in my theory, are just specific types of bending of the real physical space, the fundamental field. So this is very basic at the very foundational level, but then gets incredibly complex and complicated once you start trying to figure out, well, an electron is a structure. It's a twist vortex shape, cone shape, like an ice cream cone shape. You got a little pointed start, and it gets wider and wider and spins around until you got the other end of the electron. And particles are built this way, either clockwise or counterclockwise, one being matter and the other being antimatter. It all makes sense. It all fits together. It's an elaborate puzzle piece set. And so what I have to do is go through that and say, I've created these axioms, these explanations describing the structure of particles. And when they move, they can cause the gravitational field to emerge. So gravity and mass aren't intrinsic. They are emergent. And that's a big question in physics. I'm going to prove it. I'm not just going to keep asking that question. I'm going to prove it. And I'm going to use their math to prove it, their physics. And, all that's there available in the old textbooks that aren't really used that much anymore, the standard field theory and so forth. I'm building new equations like Max Tegmark. Yeah. You know the guy.
Yeah.
And he requested like a God equation, and I've got that now. I built that from the field equations. I used AI to help me do that. But I did it through the descriptions. I fed into it. This is physical reality. This is the shape. This is the structure. And when they move, space bends and twists. I put all that in axioms, as Hilbert in his sixth problem suggests. Look that up, guys. Yeah, I'm not going to explain that now. But basically, you can develop a physical theory using axioms. And fed this all into the AI, and then the AI says, I can prove that. I says, well, let's try solving a problem. And it solved that problem. And then let's try solving this other problem, solve that problem. The power of AI is really has to do a great deal with it. You've got to be able to work with it. On its own, it can't think up anything that I told it. It would have no idea how to solve the electron mass. If I told it, use quantum mechanics, it'll flounder and fail. Use relativity, it will flounder and fail. But if I give it specific model information, mechanical model, that's what all these physicists use. Einstein used mechanical models. When you give it the right one, it'll work. And I possess the right one. I have it very well laid out and documented. And with that, together we have a shot at solving everything. Basically, this universe is very, very simple. There's only one thing and one thing at all that exists. And that thing is what?
Energy. That's
close. Space.
I was going to say that, or
Space
space, because it's not time. It's not time.
Well, time comes from space.
Well,
and I have to prove that, and that'll be another paper.
Well, and that's something that we get into on this show pretty regularly, though, Mark, is that of all things, and I am a science guy, man, to the point that I literally wrote a field guide for paranormal investigators to write their data down in a scientific way. I'm so much of a data and a science guy. But even in Einstein's work, time is relative to the observer. There's a reason why when you go into orbit, time changes slightly. When you go to the moon, time definitely changes. Like you are on a different body of different mass. If you went to Jupiter, you'd need a totally different watch to tell time in the way that we do here. It goes beyond the point of just a time zone. It becomes the fact that the gravity that you are in changes your perception of time. So, like, time
That's
is
true.
Go ahead.
You got to correct something you're saying. This is the same mistake physicists make. You're saying time is changing. It's not time that's changing.
It's your perception.
It's not even that. It's the rate of time, the flow.
Sure.
That's what's changing.
Yeah.
It's slowing down or speeding up, depending on if you go into gravitational field.
Sure.
It slows down. You come out of the gravitational field, it speeds up. You increase your velocity in a certain direction, and the faster you go, the slower time goes. That's the Lorentz transformations. The time itself is an emergent thing. Without a real physical space, the fundamental field, remember I said electromagnetism and gravity emerge as aspects of a single fundamental field. That's what I'm talking about. The fundamental field, which they call the ether. They think it's been disproven, but I'm going to prove that's wrong.
Well,
I'm going to prove, because none of this theory that I have works unless there's an ether, a fundamental field, and that fundamental thing, that space, is a quasi-elastic solid. That's an axiom in my theory.
Interesting.
It goes in there. And so now that I have a description, a structure that I can put in, quasi means if you put a force to it, like a magnetic field, that space will bend to the shape of that magnetic field. It'll rotate, basically. Mm. And if I put electrostatic field, the field itself will, wherever it occupies, becomes the structure, the form of that particle, the charge. So the fundamental field is what everything is made of. You don't have it. It's the thing that makes time emerge, makes gravity emerge, makes magnetism emerge. The only thing that's not emergent is charge. And everything basically comes from charge. When it moves, all the rest happens. The universe has gravity. The universe has light. The universe can be detected and seen. And the molecules and the atoms all form and work because of electromagnetism, and a little bit to the extent of this new forces that I've discovered, which I'll have a paper on, linear gravity and linear anti-gravity. No. And that gets into a whole nother field that I don't want to talk about in detail because I value my life. But it's part of the unified field theory.
Oh, absolutely.
At some point,
I'll say the word anti-gravitic technologies, but
yeah, you got to be careful with that word. I don't throw it around much, and I don't put it in any of my papers. But
yeah,
it's a part of the unified field theory. It must exist.
Yeah, like it has to. It has to by definition.
Yeah, and no, I won't say anything else
Well,
on that.
and generating that, what have you, is something totally different. But well, one thing that we can get into that relates to this directly is, and we got into slightly with the toroidal aspects of particle motion, things like that. But you were quite literally just describing how like a plasma toroidal field is made. The idea of you're going to charge some particles, but then you're going to shape them with something else, with another field around it. So how do these fields begin to come into play together? And how do these fields basically interact with us? Mark.
You see, here's the point I want to make. It's very important. All the particles in the universe, all of them, are consubstantial with the field, the fundamental field. It means they are made of the same thing as the fundamental field. Think of it, the space where there's nothing. It's just a flat Euclidean geometry with parallel lines going up and down. It's just a flat grid, no bending at all. But when a particle enters that space, it has a certain structure that's encoded into the space at the time of creation. There's where we can get into our, philosophical arguments, but we're going to just assume right now they're created and they are persistent. They don't unravel. That's a bit of a mystery too. And I have to explain that. Nobody else has, so I'm the only one that I know of that's going to even try. And these particles are really geometries or configurations of the fundamental field. They are made of the fundamental field. So these configurations go through space. It's not space that's moving, or it's not like bullet through air.
Yes.
It's really the field shape moves and space adopts and snaps into it as it enters and leaves that area. It's a configured space that's persistent, doesn't unravel, cannot be destroyed, cannot be created. It just exists. And, at some point I may have to go beyond and explain where it comes from. Well, but my concern is not a fear. It's just the way it might be, and people may have to accept it that God created those particles.
Well, and
ultimately,
go ahead.
Ultimately, the ultimate explanation for where mass and energy and particles come from is going to probably come from a divine creator.
Yeah. And it's interesting because there are numerous stories. There's the story of the mathematician that said that he found God and had the mathematical proof for the existence of God. But even Stephen Hawking famously had a scientific crisis of conscience and change of heart toward the end of his life, where he was like, surely, whether you believe in God or not, there is something that pushed all this into being. You can call it God, call it whatever you want, but I would agree with there was something that was prime mover, something that begat this domino chain of events that begat what we know. And even the concept in physics, and this is an interesting one, but it's because it's made of particles, and this is one that'll bake your noodle, folks, that space, and you hear it all the time. You see the demonstrations all the time in physics where you see the flat plane, then you see the round object, and you see how it warps space around it because of its mass as it moves, and you see the field of space get divoted out and come back as the object moves around. But the one thing that we don't really consider is the fact that space itself has mass. So when you're talking about where does this come from, it may well be its own self-sustained source in that kind of way, because mass.
I agree with the idea that space itself has mass, because mass is emergent, and it's a special. You need motion to create the mass.
But all
And the only other
particles
way
are in motion, right? I'm just
particles are
I'm
in
just going
motion.
devil's advocate here, brother.
Well, yeah, go ahead. It's the mass. There's really two types of mass or two types of gravity. This is going to get a bit confusing, but I'll try to explain. Let's just talk about the Newtonian Einstein one.
Absolutely.
Gravity one. I'll leave the other one out because that's the cause of particle motion. But the cause of mass happens as a result of, I thought I had it here somewhere. The Ehrenfest paradox basically describes the cause of mass as being accelerated particles. Accelerated could mean not just somebody hitting the floor. There you go.
I'm quick.
People read up on that. But a spinning disk or a spinning cylinder, he described to Einstein and other people, this causes a contraction in the direction of motion. And this contraction, makes the space bend in such a way that it's non-Euclidean. I just wish I had that.
Don't you go giving ammo to the flat earthers now with the gravity coming from a rotating disc.
Well,
I'm just playing.
Inertia and gravity, I didn't know that that's something they believed.
Well, no. I've made the joke for years that no, like it's basically like we're all sitting on a turntable. Here
it is.
If you stop the turntable, all the coins fly off of it. So as long as it's turning and we're turning with it, it's all good.
Yeah,
it's totally not sound. Absolutely not sound.
If you read the Ehrenfest paradox, it makes sense. Einstein thought so. He wrote 7 more papers about that after he read that. He got very excited because he saw a way to generate gravity, a gravitational field, from the particles themselves by this particular type of motion, which, like the quarks, are going in this type of motion inside of the neutron and the proton in the core. They're moving in a trefoil pattern.
Yeah.
And I wrote a paper and proved it. I solved the mass using that trefoil pattern, using that trefoil equation, which you can get from the internet, and put it together with certain other equations, and voila, the correct mass comes out. And so in my mind, I've got that solved. Am I going to be able to prove it to the level that the physicists would be accepting? Maybe. I'm going to have to do it geometrically in another way, and I will attempt to do that at some point. But I have done the surface level analysis and paper, and I get the right answer. And that should count for something. Because nobody else has been able to predict the mass of the proton or the neutron.
Yeah.
Not quantum mechanics. No, doesn't really predict it. And no, field, any string theory, doesn't do it. So anybody who can do that and do it successfully basically has a unified field theory, because now you're seeing that gravity is emergent. It's not just there. Mass is emergent. It's not just there. It has to be created. And the only way to do that is through the motion of particles in an accelerated circular orbital kind of motion. They all do it. The quarks do it. The electrons do it. The only ones that don't do it, here's the bottom line, are things that move straight. So when you get to a particle like a photon, it's massless. But it doesn't move in an accelerated motion. It just moves straight, non-accelerating. So that matches my theory. I remember the day I realized that. It was a happy day in my life. I'm sitting at work and I'm looking at the fundamental particles and interactions thing at my desk, and I say, I know it. It makes sense. Photons don't have mass because they move in a straight line, non-accelerating. There's evidence. It's right there in front of their faces. They didn't see that. The only other particle, the neutrino, also travels in a straight line, but it has a little bit of mass. But the neutrino is doing something different. Photon does not oscillate. does not, but the neutrino is going wah, 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 wah. As it moves straight down. It's changing its frequency, I think,
Yep.
a little bit. That is an accelerated motion. Then it generates a tiny bit of mass. So the arguments hold through every situation and every particle. All the other particles that are unbalanced charges, either positive or negative, they're going like this. And that motion creates tremendous amount of mass through its own contraction, and then the space around it contracts. And gravity mass is a contraction of space, pure and simple.
Yeah.
It only gets tricky when you try to calculate all this stuff at the atomic level. And because there's a lot going on. There's motion, there's the interface between the particle and the ether that's got to be computed. And there's a toroidal shape, so that's got to be computed. And there's a relationship, how it's changing. It's very complicated. There's no way around it. But somebody's got to do the work to get this done.
Now,
otherwise, we're going to stay in the dark.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I like this time has literally flown by, Mark. Looking at my timer as I just did. If you could stay for a couple more minutes, the last thing that I would like to get into is that last concept that you just talked about. The one that was literally the holy grail for Tesla. The idea of ether. The idea of there is something else, this unifying force that's out there that goes beyond electromagnetism, goes beyond the chemical bond, that really is kind of the magic and sorcery, so to speak, that the universe is made of. And this is what he always said that he had learned to tap into. That this was the source of the free energy he was looking for, all that kind of stuff, was tapping this ether, this motion between atoms, this literally space, because like we said, there are particles in space. So there's mass there. So you could create all kinds of things. You could take that static part of space and move it and do something with it. You could harness that energy that is within ether.
I think you could say the potential for mass is there.
Sure.
That potential has to be realized through some effort. And in this case of our universe, it has to be unbalanced moving charges that are accelerating.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the mass emerges from.
Yeah.
So Tesla was a great applications guy. He could think of stuff to build and it would work. You know, he probably understood the electron better than anybody else. I don't, in a way, intuitively, maybe not mathematically or scientifically, but he just knew how to make it work. He was aware of its frequency, abilities, and how it reacted with inductance and capacitance. I mean, he was just an applications genius beyond anyone. He just knew how intuitively how to build things that radio and so forth. He actually built the radio before Marconi, and he had to win that patent. Unfortunately, it didn't happen until after he died.
Yeah.
But I mean, there was nobody like him invention-wise. Everybody paled in comparison. He's no doubt wicked genius.
I mean, to the point that right now, everybody, everything from the point of generation to the point of how it hits your home is based on Tesla's technology when it comes to power and energy. It has been updated. There are new materials being used, new material maths, all kinds of stuff. But the concepts, the raw parts, everything, every bit of it was Tesla. And to this day, we're still using the same, like we've found nothing better. We've found ways to improve on the design, but we found no better design.
Right.
And that's something to be said, because we have found better ways to fly. We've found more efficient ways to fly. We've found more efficient materials to fly with. We've gone higher in flight. We've gone out to the edge of the solar system and beyond. All kinds of things. But we ain't found nothing better than Tesla's technology to make, produce, and distribute power. Still to this day. And that's something to consider.
Yeah. He came up with the AC, alternating current, which was by far better than direct current. You know, went a lot farther with a lot less effort.
A lot cleaner.
He intuitively understood the electron and how to make it sing and dance in ways only he could imagine. And he was always right. He always made these machines that work, the motor, the condenser, the radio, he even had remote control devices that he was demonstrating. He could make a boat turn left or turn right. He was just sending different signals, and those signals would then be detected and throw a relay this way or a relay that way. And, off we went. He was doing stuff way ahead of his time. He demonstrated for the Navy and how to do these things, and drones and everything really come from his thinking.
Absolutely. Well, and it's interesting that you say that, because that was the patent that he won over Marconi with, was the radio control. And it's fascinating to think that before we sent a message, before we said hello with radio, before we had entertainment or music or a doot 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 coming through on it in that kind of way, he was controlling things with it and moving things with it.
Yeah, he already had the applications worked out. He was 3 steps ahead of everybody else.
Yeah.
I mean, they would have come up with it, but decades later.
Yeah. No, that's just it. And it's one of those, I am trying to remember, there is a castle in Massachusetts that like the guy literally worked on guided missiles for the military and things like that. But all of his work was based on Tesla's radio work, every bit of it. And that's where, that's the applications. Once again, that when that application science comes as part of the front wave, it wasn't even like, hey, here's the wave of theory, here's the wave of information, here's the wave of proof, here's the wave of application. It was just an all frontal wave. with Tesla. Like, it all came to you at the same time. Like, here's a concept I had, here's an idea, here's the thing that runs it. Oh yeah, and here's 8 things that run off of it. Like, they all launched at the same time.
Yeah, the electric motor, the generator. I mean, the guy was amazing. There's nobody like him ever since, except for maybe Elon Musk. I don't know.
Well, and with that being said, Hammond Castle was the castle I was talking about. John Hayes Hammond was the radio engineer. But with that in mind, in the last couple minutes, where does this go from here, Mark? How does this relate to the world of para? And what are you hoping to prove? What synthesis are you hoping to bring together for all of this in the papers that you are currently authoring?
Well, ultimately, to bring religion and science back together again, they belong together again. If I'm right, and the others are right, who believe in that God, the supreme being, created this universe and everything and everyone in it. I'm not talking about the Bible version so much with that description. I'm talking about the real thing that kind of overlays the Bible description of Genesis.
The Aristotelian prime mover version.
That was a very local description of just the earth. I'm talking the whole universe, not just the earth included, but the whole universe and all the particles and all the people and everything in it.
Yep.
All of that, really, science should be in harmony with religion. And science doesn't have to change, but at the core foundation of reality, that emerges as some sort of, maybe we're in the mind of God himself. as in his own shared dream in which
Yeah.
we are all participants in, with free will, with a preordained, predestined design that we're supposed to try and remember, which is what one of the near-death experiencers said. He said, before I was born, before we were all born, we had to raise our right hand. Oh, did we go out, or are we still in?
Still here.
Okay. Had to raise our right hand and swear that we would try to remember what our plan is and execute that plan. That's where the free will comes in.
Yep.
You have to make that plan come true. It's your heart's desire with our creator.
Yes.
So what am I trying to do? I'm trying to solve quantum mechanics and relativity,
Yep.
solve the problems of physics. And then once I do that, then people will be willing to listen to my intelligent design theory, which is at the very heart of everything.
Yeah.
So I want to make the universe make sense. Everything explainable.
Yeah.
Everything sensible.
Yeah.
That's my goal. That's what I'm working on.
Well, and once again, these are big concepts. They're really large concepts. And I think a lot of my audience understands them. They're concepts that we talk about all the time. And especially that concept of connection with things that you were just talking about. The idea that you are one with it. It is one with you. You have a great amount of potentiality. Is the I studied a lot of philosophy, so for me, a lot of my philosophy comes right into this stuff. Like when I say the Aristotelian prime mover, like that's a hypothesis that goes beyond math, that goes beyond religion, that is just like nothing. You can't get something from nothing. That's impossible. Even Aristotle thought that. This was before science. He was like, you can't get something from nothing. That cannot happen. So something had to take something else and go whew, and put all of this into motion. At the very least, something moved. And that was the example that I used to teach my 7th graders. I used to teach 7th and 11th grade spirituality. And I would bring my students the first night of class a spring. I would bring them all a slinky, like one of the tiny little slinkies. And I would put it on their desk. What kid doesn't want a toy? Here's the thing. Don't touch the slinky. You can't touch it. We'll get to the slinky. I promise. And all class, they're tempted. They're looking at it. And we're talking. And then I explained that the whole purpose of this class, the rest of the year, we'll read the Bible, we'll talk spirituality, things like that. But the whole purpose of this class is for you to understand that the universe is a slinky. And if you understand physics and a spring, then you understand potentiality and potential energy. Inside of that spring is locked up all the potential energy in the universe. But it does nothing until you push it. That slinky will sit in your hand with all the bound up potential of the universe until you push it to slink. You have to be the one to move it. You have to be the one to put the energy into the system. The universe is not going to move. It will move mountains for you, but it's not going to do the work for you. The universe wants you to learn math. You can pray. Trust me, I prayed all day to pass geometry, man. You know what the universe wanted? For me to study geometry.
Many near-death experiencers have seen giant computers in the afterlife where equations are running in the background. I don't know what all that is, but I've heard them describe it.
Yep.
And it kind of makes sense to me that at some level, the thing about the creator that very few people get is that God, we are at the center of his attention, all humans. At the same time, all the time. It's not just there. Every grain of sand on every planet, everywhere in this universe is at the center of God's attention. He knows its composition, its purpose, its position, its energy and mass content, everything, all at once, knows all of it. And that's true for all the animals, knows all the animals, their consciousness, where they are, what they're doing, what they're thinking, for everything. It's like it's hard for us linear, finite beings to kind
Yeah.
of have perception of that, but it's all connecting. And this is omnipresence, everything.
Yeah. Well, it's because we are in the active flow of time.
Is.
Yeah. It's because as we talked about earlier, to loop this back around, it's because we are in the active flow and spin of time. We are not viewing time from outside. We're viewing time from inside of it.
He's outside of
from
time.
action and everything else. From the actual plane of space.
God in the afterlife are outside of time.
Yeah.
But we are inside of time. And, I'm going to write a paper about this some way. Basically, time is a slave to this equation. Distance equals rate times time. Now, what happens if that distance, let's say it takes so many minutes for sunlight to get to the Earth, about 8.5 minutes, I think.
Close to.
Why is that? Because there's something in between the Earth, something is there.
Yeah.
And that's light, that photon of light has to traverse that distance. If space were truly equal to nothing, value of zero, nothing there at all, light would get here instantly. And that never happens. Physicists can confirm over and over again that has never happened.
Yep.
There is no time at which light from the sun gets here instantly.
Yeah.
That's because space is a real thing.
Yeah.
Without that space, time ceases to exist. Everything would become instantaneous, and there would be no future and no past. It would be all one. And I think that's what it's like in the afterlife.
Yeah. Yeah. And once again, at that point, you're at a different frequency. You aren't in this dimension in that kind of way.
It may not be. We're physical. It's a type of energy that's not not based on electrons and photons. It's spiritual energy.
Yeah,
which is some sort of consciousness energy.
Well,
I don't know. I'm speculating here, but
no, that's hey man, that is the conversation. Like quite literally. By the time this airs, I will have just gotten back from Psy Games. And there is a whole panel on I wish you could come, man, because there's a whole panel with Rizwan Virk, Caroline Corey, all kinds of people talking about just the nature of reality itself. And when the one thing we talk about on this show all the time, the only class out of that many years that I went to school that I made decent grades in was science. I always did decent in science.
I love science. Yeah.
And I will always, we're all 90% empty space by atomic theory. So when you start looking at that, how am I even leaning on this table, man? Like that is just electronic propulsion or repulsion. That's a repulsion of electron field. That's
electromagnetism, basically.
That's quantum fields. I am an intelligent frequency bound by a quantum field, and matter is what I am. That's the definition of human. So when you think about that and just think about the fact that if all of this is 90% empty space, then how much of it is agreed upon illusion? How much of it is cooperative matrix in that kind of way, where because we've all agreed right now that we need to be vibrating at this frequency to learn whatever lesson we learn in the universe or whatever. That's why we're here, and whenever that happens, we vibrate an octave higher and shed this mortal coil, and we go to the next dimension where we're closer to the source and closer and still part of that harmonic chord of the universe that we talked about earlier, where without our note, like we said in the pre-show, like I told you, we are all a unique facet on the gem of the universe. And without us, the universe does not sparkle the same, people. Without our unique note in the universe, it doesn't resonate. The chord doesn't resonate and sing the same. So that, like, when you ring a bell, it doesn't stop. It just goes to where you can't hear it. The sound is still moving by all physics. The question is whether or not the intensity is there to carry the sound. It's still moving. It's still going. It's still perturbing things in a different way. So the ring still exists. You just can't hear it on that frequency anymore. So that's actual physics, just as an audio engineer. That's actual physics. And that's wild to think about, that we are connected in this different way. And that's why eventually physicists, scientists, everybody boils down to like, hey, man, I don't know what religion, but there's something else going on.
Yeah.
There is some sort of intelligent design. There is something.
Once we realize that, we will evolve.
Yeah.
It'll be a global moment.
I can't wait for it.
I hope so. I hope to be a part of that. I hope I can help that happen.
I think your work will be a resounding part of that, Mark, because it is truly what I loved about it. And I'll have to go through and read it again. I'll have it up on screen right here, folks. You can find it at super-relativity.com. The book is Master of Reality, Super Relativity, and Unified Theory. And what I loved about it is a great onboarding to a lot of very, very thick data and information. The things that we've talked about tonight are thick and hearty, meaty subjects, man. They are things that people spend decades. And I will always recommend anybody. I tried to become an affiliate. I am not an affiliate. I do not make money off of advertising the Great Courses series. 0%. But I would recommend anybody go spend the $10 a month if you can on Amazon for the Great Courses series. I have taken 12-part lecture series from MIT astrophysicists, man, where it's like, you'd have to physically go take a class to hear this from this guy. But right. They get into all of this, man. They get into the motion of the universe, motion of atoms. Like, you can take everything from Lost History of the Knights Templar to physics, to astrophysics, all kinds of things. Great Courses series. Cannot recommend it enough. It's absolutely awesome. And there's things like this on there where you can learn these deep math things.
I want to make one prediction on your show.
Please.
I think we have enough technology to prove this statement true. The sun's core, and this is in my book, the sun's core is solid. It's made of neutronium. I challenge the scientific community to prove that or disprove it. They're going to find that the sun's core has a solid neutronium, meaning it's made of neutrons only. That's what neutron stars are, but there's a small one in the center of this star and every star in the universe. That's a bold prediction that doesn't exist in cosmology right now. And that's core is what caused the sun to form in the first place. So my challenge is prove it or disprove it, and it'll be on the show. So once it happens and gets proved, there are going to be millions of people want to come back and see this episode where I predicted it live.
I will
years in advance.
I have marked this down. Anytime anybody makes a prediction, things like that, I always make a note. Back in the day when we were, I mean, you were even on Dudes and Beer back in the day before we transformed into Curious Realm, man. And we used to have a thing. We used to have a thing on Dudes and Beer on social media called hashtag Dudes and Beer called it, where things that we would say, where I would be like, guaranteed in the next couple years, you're going to see stuff like this. You're going to start seeing this. And when we'd see it on social media, we would post the news article with hashtag Dudes and Beer called it. So I will be doing the same thing. Curious Realm calls it nowadays. You can go and search for hashtag Curious Realm called it, all kinds of stuff. But when it happens, we will post that news article from Science about
replay
it.
This video, advertise it.
Absolutely.
You've got a golden gem prediction there.
I will just about guarantee, Mark, that my Opus Clip AI will pull that clip. It will pull that prediction clip. Just about guaranteed.
Right.
And I'll let you know if it does. Because it's pretty interesting. The things that it pulls is like, no, you should post this. It'll get some good traction. So let's see if it pulls your prediction automatically. So, but I've made note of where it is. So I'm looking forward to having you on again. I'm looking forward to updates on this. It's been way too long since we've had you back on, but I'm almost glad that it has been this long, because there has been a lot of things that have happened in your research. You have made a lot of headway since the last time we chatted. So I'd love to have you on a couple times a year to talk about this. These are topics we talk about regularly, Mark. And I think your work really does help demystify a lot of this for people who are not the mathematicians out there. Well,
I think a lot of people wonder about these things, but it never goes beyond wondering, because it's hard to find people who are willing to talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
And your show and shows like this are willing to talk about this sort of thing. And hopefully someday some of these other shows and physicists that have shows on the internet will be willing to talk about these things. And certainly there are physicists out there now that speculate like crazy. And they allow them to talk. Michio Kaku, for one.
Oh, yeah. him and Avi Loeb. Avi Loeb. But what I will always say, Mark, and I defend them because here's the thing. It is, I say all the time, one of the charges of this show is we need more Magellans. We need more people who are like, fund me and my expedition. I am fearlessly going to go to that line on that horizon. I may not come back. See you soon. We need more people who are willing to bravely and boldly hypothesize for science, because that's what science is. And without those brave, bold hypotheses, all of the beginning of the 1900s, we lost a president who 6 months later, had that doctor known to wash his hands, that president would be alive. At the time, we were still talking about the four forces that move the human body: phlegm, and and ether. Ether was one of them. So like we didn't know about micro. There was a dude that was talking about microbes. A dude that was saying a black surgeon in America that was saying we should really wash our hands. There's things on them that make us sick. And people were like, you are a crazy person. You're crazy right now. That is absolutely not scientific. We know this is phlegm. We know this is bile, that he has an imbalance of bile and ether, and that's what's making him sick. Lo and behold, no. Very rapidly, within 10 years, we found out, had he just washed his hands and sterilized his instruments, that president could have lived, all kinds of things. So, that was Buchanan. There was a really cool dramatization series that was just done of his death and how Grover Cleveland became president. Because, he was shot by a guy in the street, and the doctor just kind of kept digging instruments into him and digging his fingers in and checking around every day and not cleaning his hands or instruments. And he died of sepsis and infection. So we discover things in science all the time, but it's through challenging that system and the entrenchment of that system that we discover them. And that becomes the norm. Even the fact of flat Earth, if you want to make fun of it, folks, feel free to look at the history of humanity, how long we've been around and philosophizing, how long since Pythagoras, a few thousand years, about 3,000, something like that. So when you look at that and then look at the fact of Magellan was all of 500 years ago, that is very recent. That is very recent that we have scientifically accepted that the world is round and that we are not the center of the universe. That's very recent science when you look at the scope of humanity.
Science has been wrong a lot.
A lot. Yeah. And you have to be willing to bravely and boldly hypothesize and say, yep, you're right. I was wrong. Let me hit the slide rule again. So I'm glad that you've been hitting the slide rule with your work, man. I am glad to see what you've brought it to, where you've brought it just in the last year or so. Let everybody know where they can go to find out more about super relativity, where they can go to, if they're a scientist who would like to collaborate with you on this, where can they go to get a hold of you?
Folks, if you know a physicist that might be willing to listen to some of that, I'm willing to work with them, very definitely. Oh, in my website, you go to it, www.super-relativity.com. It's going to change in a few months, a few weeks, I'm not sure which yet, but I'm going to put something where I post my activities.
Oh, great.
Daily, weekly. So
Good.
People can just, it's too hard for me to write emails and send all these different people.
Yeah, no,
like I've been doing.
Yeah,
I just put it there, and then people can go and look and say, "Oh, well, he discovered this. Oh, we found that. Oh, here's some documentation."
Yeah,
I'll just keep a running kind of a blog, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea, man. Because truly, at that point, it gives you a different way to, like I authored a remote viewing journal log. And what's interesting is when remote viewers see it, they ask me why they need it. Like, like I already do all of this. I already put all of my stuff in a notebook. So why do I need it? What is the point of this? Why do I need this book? And I'm like, it's awesome that you made notes. Have you transcribed those notes somewhere else so that you can read them? Because the important thing is transcribing that data so that your brain gets a second chance to cook on that data. So whenever you coalesce it as a blog article, you're likely going to make new discoveries as you coalesce that together.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I've had that happen too, so I would agree with that.
And, well, I want to thank you so much for your time today, Mark. It's been fantastic. Once again, let everybody know where they can go to find the book, where they can go to catch up with you.
www.super-relativity.com. That's where my some of my videos are, my blogs, some of my older papers. The newer ones are not uploaded yet. They're still under work in progress. So that's where everything I got going on is going to be right now, centralized from that website.
Well,
and also the YouTube page.
Well, Mark, once again, thank you so much for your time today. I greatly appreciate the extra time. Hold the line real quick while we close things out with the audience, all right? While you are online, everybody, checking out everything from super-relativity.com and Mark Fiorentino, make sure to stop on by Curious Realm. CuriousRealm.com is where you can like, follow, subscribe. That is where you can find your copy of not only the remote viewing session log, but also the field observation and encounter log. If you are a researcher in the world of paranormal, UFO, UAP activity, cryptozoology, if you are out doing field work, right there at Curious Research, you can get your copy of the field observation and encounter log and make sure that your field data is ready to shake hands with science come the day that you needed to do so. Thank you so much, as always, everybody, for your open hearts, your open minds. That is what makes the conversation. Without the conversation, humanity does not march forward. So remember, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and stay curious. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of The Curious Realm. Stay tuned for more guests, forbidden topics, and hidden truths. Follow us on social media by searching Curious Realm. To download the official Curious Realm app and view the Knowledge Vault, or become a sponsor of Curious Realm, visit our website at curiousrealm.com. Curious Realm is available on your favorite podcast and video services, curiousrealm.com, as well as KGRA Radio, APR TV, and the official Curious Realm app for Roku devices. Curious Realm is a proud member of the Ground Zero Media family of podcasts. For more shows and members-only content, visit groundzeroplus.com today. Thanks for listening. Stay curious, and remember, the other side is always watching.